Hello, this is Richard Norman. Uh, I thought I would do a little bit of more streaming today. Uh, I don't know how long I can do this because I've had a very busy weekend and I'm a little bit tired this today. But I wanted to show you this picture that hangs behind me on the wall most of the time. This is that little girl that I got married to. She was 17 in this picture, and it was not a color picture. It was hand painted by her aunt, who was a professional photographer. And her aunt made her up to look like that, did her hair and everything, and took her picture. And after we got engaged, she used that picture of herself as an engagement picture for the newspaper. Uh, Her hair was not brown like that. Uh, she was a very dark brunette. It wasn't raven black like that, but it was, it looked black, but it was soft. It was not like raven black hair. Uh, and I need to tell you that she was part Indian, American Indian, part Cherokee. Her great grandmother was a full blooded Cherokee Indian married to a white man that was a preacher, John Crittenden. And though my wife had uh, three other siblings, they did not get the traits that Indians have naturally, not nearly as much as she did. Uh, Her skin was a beautiful, beautiful golden tan, and it seemed like it had light from within. It was so pretty. And she had no hair on her arms or on her legs. She never shaved her legs in her life because of that particular trait. And her hair never turned white. I have a picture of her in her when she was 78, shortly before she died, and it just has a very few white wisps of hair in that dark hair of hers. Uh, I am doing very, very fine for, I'll be 94 next month, or in September, I mean. Uh, but I'm in incredibly good health for my age. Uh, Medicare requires that we old folks see a doctor every 3 months. But my doctor, when I go to see him, he says there's not a thing in the world wrong with me. I take no prescriptions at all, except for one. I do have insomnia very bad, and so I do take a prescription sleeping pill. And normally I sleep a good 8 or 9 hours every night and feel great the next day. Uh, at 93 and almost 94, my body is very old, but my mind is not a day over 30. Uh, it's just the body that's old, and it's getting weak. I'm getting more feeble, and almost everything I do is a struggle. Even to button my shirt is a struggle every morning. But but my health is absolutely excellent. I don't have a single ache or pain in my body. Never. I get tired very quickly, and my neck and shoulders get tired because I write so much, spend so much time writing every day, writing books, novels, and and so I do get tired, and by the time lunch is over, I nearly always have to lie down 30 minutes or an hour, maybe sometimes. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you about my health. And let me see. No, insomnia is not a good thing. And there are times that I'll wake up at maybe 1 or 2 in the morning and can't go back to sleep. But I'll lie there for another hour or so trying to sleep, and eventually around 4:30 I'll be up anyway. I usually get up every morning between 4 and 5. I was up about, I think it was 4:30 this morning when I got up. Anyway, I wanted to show you something else. I managed to get some of these pictures off of the wall, and I thought I'd show them to you. This is the portrait I did of my wife when we were dating. I think this was on our 4th date. We went on a couple of pretty high heel, and she sat down and I drew her picture. The wind was blowing her hair terribly. And this is the one I didn't think was very good and wanted to destroy it, and she wouldn't let me. And so I still have it. And I was telling you about when I did those. I learned to do painting like the old masters did. I bought all the chemical things and medium and all the things that they used. And this is one of the paintings that I did using that method to be sure I could do it. That's just one of them. I did 2 of those, 2 pictures. And this is the other one that I painted. And that gives you a little bit of an idea of my paintings. My artwork is not important. I didn't do anything for fame. I never was interested in being famous. I just did things I like to do. And when I finished doing commercial art, was run out of business by the computer art, I had no more interest in art. I was painting a picture by Cézanne and I never finished it. And I never went back to drawing or anything after I was about 60 years old. It wasn't important to me. The only thing that was important to me was commercial art and doing illustrations. I illustrated many, many books. Most of them were technical manuals or instruction manuals on how to do some kind of process or something. And I did work for IBM and Texas Instruments and some of the other electronic companies like that. Did quite a lot of work for that group of people in my time. My wife, as I said, well, let me tell you the story. That's what I intended to do anyway. I saw her for the first time in my life after church one Sunday morning. She was waiting to be picked up by her uncle. I didn't know anything about any of this, but she was out standing on the curb waiting for a ride to go home. And I was about 40 feet away, and I looked up and I saw her, and I said, "My goodness, that is the most beautiful girl I have ever laid eyes on." And of course, I went to a big high school, and there were a lot of really pretty girls there, but I'd never seen anyone that I thought was that pretty. And I thought, well, I'll never see her again because she was not a member of our congregation. And I had never seen her before. I didn't think I'd ever see her again, but Sunday night she came back for the evening worship. Well, I was 17, 18 years old. No, I was close to 19, I guess, when I saw her for the first time. And I was leading the congregational singing at church. And so when she showed up Sunday night for church, she sat with a friend of mine whose name was Dick Lyle. He was a big, tall, dark, and handsome boy. I was a little skinny blonde runt. But she sat by him, and they were sitting up close to the front. So when I sat down by them. And after church, I got to meet her. I had him introduce me to her. And then I invited the both of them to come home with me. I was still living at home with my parents. And we'd have some soft drinks and some cookies or something. And we'd play records. And so they did. They came. And Joe and I had a great time. I don't know what Dick was doing. Neither one of us ever paid any attention to him after we met because it was love at first sight. And that night, I would play a record and I'd sing along with it. So I sang to her quite a bit that night for her. And I think I didn't see her again until Wednesday night, and that's when I found out where she was living, under what circumstances. She lived in a little town north of Austin, about 30 miles, and she needed to go to summer school. She'd been sick a lot as a child, small child, and she was trying to make up some of her schooling by going to summer school. Well, that little town, they didn't have summer school, but we did in Austin. So she had an uncle that lived in Austin. And so she came down to stay with him through the summer. And that's how I met her. This was late July. And so we met on a Sunday night. On Wednesday night, I took her home after church. And we drove around in the car, my father's car, and went to a little park and sat on a park bench and talked, probably for an hour or more, and just visited is all we did. When I dropped her off at her place, I started to try to kiss her goodnight, and she said, "I don't kiss on the first date." And so I said, "Well, okay." Well, it was the very next night I decided I'd just go over there, uninvited and unannounced. I'd just show up at her uncle's place. And I did. I drove into the driveway there and knocked on the door and went inside. And there she was sitting on the couch doing her homework. She had on a skirt and blouse and some sandals. And she was working on her homework, and her hair was all up in curlers, big curlers. And we got to talking there, and all of a sudden she realized she had curlers in her hair, and she jumped up and ran off and took those out and brushed her hair and came back. And I asked her if we could go for a little ride again in the car, and we did. And again, we went out to the same little park nearby, sat on a park bench, and just talked, told each other about our life story, our family, our history, things that we liked and didn't like, and how what we were interested in, and all that kind of thing. So we got to really know each other as a person very well. And we continued to do that. I think and she let me kiss her that night. And then the third date, there was a good bit of that hugging and kissing going on. Nothing more than that. But anyway, I thought I was madly in love with her, madly in love with her. And I think she was with me. And so we began to talk about getting married on our third date. And so in a way, I kind of asked her to marry me. And in a way, she said yes, but not in those words. It just was something we kind of agreed upon as we talked. And so over a span of 10 days from the time we met, on the sixth, we had 6 dates within 10 days. And on the 6th date, I presented her with a 1/2-carat diamond ring, and she accepted. And 2 months later, we were married, and we had known each other only 54 days. We were never intimate before we got married. The reason it took that long was her mother insisted that she have a big, fine church wedding, and her mother wanted to make her wedding dress. And that's what took so long, or we'd have been married probably the next day otherwise, because we were convinced that we wanted to live our life together. And I would tell her how pretty she was. I thought she was beautiful, and I would tell her that, but every time, without fail, she would respond by saying, "Pretty is as pretty does." In other words, it wasn't nearly as important. Her beauty on the outside wasn't important. What was important was the beauty that was on the inside. And she was just as beautiful on the inside, sweet, kind, precious. In 61 years, I don't remember ever having an argument with her. We would always agree. We would always work out whatever it was. In fact, before we married, and when I told my parents, and told her parents, my parents were rather disturbed because I was 19 and she was 17. And so the preacher came and talked to us a little bit. And he said to my parents and to us, he said to us, "There isn't any problem that can arise in a marriage that 2 Christians can't work out together." And that was a mantra we literally lived by. Anytime we had any disagreement, we just sat down and talked it out calmly and made our compromises one way or another, and we always got along just fine. She was a remarkable person. I took her out of the 11th grade to get married, and she didn't go back and get her GED until she was, I think she was about close to 60 before she got her high school diploma, a GED, in Dallas. And the people in Dallas said that she made the highest grade that had ever been made on that test for her GED. Then she went to a junior college and got a degree. And so she had her education, but she was in her 60s by then. But before that, shortly after we married, she taught a ladies' Bible class at a big church, had 1,400 members. The class was 75, 80 ladies, and she was 20 when she started teaching that class, and she became a very famous teacher in our brotherhood, and we together did a lot of teacher training work. I taught how to manage a Bible class, Bible school, and she taught teaching women the Bible. And we went around the country with different churches teaching those kinds of courses. Of course, I only had a high school education. I got married. I didn't go to college till I was 40. And even then, I only could go at night. And the only reason I got plenty of hours, but the only reason I didn't get a college diploma was because I wouldn't take math or science. I knew I couldn't pass those. And so I didn't get a degree. And she, without a degree, an 11th grade education, was a very prominent and sought after teacher. And she even spoke at a college lectureship to women one time and wrote a book, and I illustrated the book on how to use visual aids in teaching. And so here she was with only 11th grade education, but that girl was a brilliant girl. I think she was a genius, and our children think she was probably a genius as well, because there wasn't anything in the world that she set her mind to do that she couldn't do. When I was about, I don't know, I'd been a freelance artist for a while, and one day I was putting up a swing set for the kids in the backyard, and it collapsed and scissored down and broke that little finger and crushed it. And I had an operation on it to try to fix it and straighten it out. And actually I had two, but after the first one, my hand was all bandaged up and in a contraption. And I had artwork at home that I was doing. I worked from home, had a drawing board and all the equipment. And I was doing work for a national company called Borg Warner that made washers and dryers and those kinds of machines. And I had a big project that I'd been working on for that company. And it was due on Friday, and I'd done this on Tuesday. And I said, what am I going to do? When she came to see me in the hospital. And she said, well, you tell me what needs to be done, and I'll do it. And I said, I had no idea she could do artwork. It never entered my mind. And I said, you? And she said, well, I've been watching you. I think I can do what you do. And so I said, well, go ahead. And she went home and brought the work, and I told her what needed to be done. And she did it and brought it to me, and it was perfect and not any better than not any worse than I could do. It was every bit as good. And we sold it and went on our way. And after that, when I'd get a lot of work and I couldn't handle it all, I set her up a drawing board and bought all of the equipment and stuff. And we worked side by side in my art studio. She was as good an illustrator as I was, or better in some respects. And she did tons of drawings, illustrations for books. And I still have some of those drawings of hers that she did. She was marvelous. And we had 6 children, and as I said, all of them were girls except for 5 boys. And along the way, we picked up stray children now and then to add to the group. And over the years, we had 5 additional kids that we never adopted them. We were not legally foster parents or anything, but somehow they came under our control for one reason or another. We never had more than 7 kids in the house at one time, though. But we love children. I still love kids. I think they're the most marvelous little things, so cute and sweet. I just love kids. And we were living in Wichita Falls. I was preaching up there, and she got sick one night and insisted on going to the emergency room, and I took her, and he thought she had some kind of stomach disorder and was going to give her some pills and send her home. And somehow or another, he decided to do an x-ray. And when he did, he found a huge tumor in her lower abdomen. And immediately they called a surgeon and they took it out. I think it was a 6-pound cancer tumor. He thought he got it all out, but he didn't. It came back, and it turned out to be ovarian cancer. And in those days, and I don't know about it now, but in those days, there was not even any treatment for it. It was fatal. And they said all they could do was keep her comfortable until she passed. And she lived 3 years and then passed away. She was 78 when she died, and I thought still the most beautiful girl in the world. And so I thought I'd tell you a little bit about my wife. And I don't love her any less, and just as much as I ever did. I think she was so wonderful to have, and I was so blessed that she was my wife. She insisted that I be the head of the house. She said to the kids, they'd ask her something, and she'd say, well, did you ask your father? And they said, no. She'd say, well, you go ask him. He's the head of the house. Whatever he says goes. And that's the way she made me do. She insisted that I was going to be the head of the house. And she went along with whatever decisions I made. I'd try to get her, I'd tell her I had this opportunity or that situation and I thought I'd do this or that. And she said, well, whatever you do is fine. I'll just let me tag along. And so that's the way she was. She wouldn't enter into any discussion about the decision I had to make. It's kind of unusual, but she was a very, very unusual girl. Anyway, I think that's enough for today. And I thought I'd share with you. I got those down off the wall because I didn't think I could ever put them back up. But it turns out my youngest boy, Joe, is going to come tomorrow and have lunch with me, and he'll put them back on the wall for me. I know I can't do it. Among my 6 children, I need to tell you this. We had a son, and his name was Richard Jr., and we called him Richie. And one day when he was about 3 years old, he came in and he said, I'm not Richie anymore. He said, my name is Tex. He said, I gave all my other names away. And he would never answer to anything but Tex after that. After he was grown and married, he had it legally changed to Tex because he was always known as Tex. He's the one that passed away in 2019 about a month before his 69th birthday. He had a heart attack. And then we had a second boy and a third boy, Tim, and then John. And then we had a little girl, and she just didn't believe that she could have a little girl. But when they brought the baby to her for the first time, she looked at her and said, it is a little girl, and she just cried. We were so proud of her. And her name is Carol, and she and her husband live in Seattle now. And after that, about 4 years later, we had surprise. She was pregnant again. She was 32, and found out she had twins. And when the twins were born, they were identical twin boys. They really looked alike. It was not easy to tell them apart until they got older. Well, they had little differences that we could identify, of course, because we were so close to them. But Joe, he's the younger twin by 4 minutes. He's younger than his older brother. And he lives here in this area. Jim doesn't live in this area right now. My kids are kind of scattered around. But Joe comes to see me every week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And he buys my groceries for me and looks after me. But my kids take very good care of me. I want for nothing. They're just wonderful young people. Anyway, perhaps we'll talk again another time. Thank you for watching, and God bless all of you. Goodbye until next time.